The kitchen smelled like cinnamon rolls and bacon at 3:47 in the morning, and I was standing there in my pajamas with flour on my cheek, arranging a fruit platter for 12 people who hated me. Let me say that again so it really lands. I was up before dawn baking from scratch for my husband's entire family. His mother Karen, his father Doug, his sister Jennifer, her husband Todd, their 3 kids, his brother Brandon, Brandon's new girlfriend, and his grandmother Nana Ruth, all of whom were sleeping peacefully in my house in beds I'd made with fresh sheets I'd bought with my own money. And I was smiling. I was actually smiling because I thought this was love. I thought this was what a good wife does. Then the front door opened and Michael walked in. He stood in the hallway with his jacket half off, his eyes bloodshot, smelling like whiskey and something floral that wasn't my perfume. He looked at me, standing in my apron, surrounded by enough food to feed a small army, and he said one word: divorce. Not I'm sorry, not we need to talk, not even good morning, just divorce. I remember the exact sound the whisk made when I set it down on the granite counter, a small metallic clink. I remember the oven timer still had 14 minutes left on the cinnamon rolls. I remember the coffee maker gurgled behind me, finishing its cycle like the universe was mocking me with normalcy. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't throw anything. I untied my apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter next to the fruit platter. Then I walked past him close enough to smell that floral scent, close enough to see the faintest smudge of lipstick on his collar, and I went upstairs to our bedroom. I pulled out the suitcase I'd bought for our honeymoon trip to Cancun 4 years ago, and I started packing. 7 minutes. That's how long it took me to pack up my entire life in that house. 7 minutes. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about being the wife who does everything. You don't actually accumulate much. The house was filled with things, sure, but almost none of them were mine. I walked back down the stairs with that suitcase rolling behind me, each bump on the steps, echoing through the quiet house. Michael was still standing in the hallway looking confused, like he'd expected a fight, like he'd rehearsed for tears and accusations and bargaining. Instead, I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Tell your mother the cinnamon rolls need 8 more minutes." Then I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove away. That was the last time Michael saw me as the woman he thought I was. Quiet, obedient, grateful little Ashley, who'd never fight back. He had no idea what was coming. None of them did. But I need to go back. I need to tell you how I ended up in that kitchen at 4 in the morning, and why I stayed as long as I did, and what happened in the weeks after I walked out that door. Because this story isn't really about a divorce. It's about what happens when a person who's been invisible finally decides to be seen. Let me take you back 3 years. I met Michael Whitfield at a friend's backyard barbecue in June, the kind of gathering where someone always brings too much potato salad, and someone else always ends up in the pool fully clothed. I was 26, working as a financial analyst at a mid-size firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had my own apartment, a decent credit score, 742, I was proud of that, and a growing 401k that my dad had drilled into me to start funding the day I got my first real paycheck. I wasn't looking for anyone. I'd just gotten out of a 2-year relationship with a guy named Derek who was perfectly nice but perfectly boring. And I was enjoying the freedom of eating cereal for dinner and binge-watching crime documentaries without someone asking me to put on something lighter. Michael was different from the moment I saw him. Tall, dark hair, easy laugh. He was flipping burgers on the grill and telling a story about getting lost in Barcelona during a college trip, and everyone around him was hanging on every word. He had this magnetism, the kind of energy that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room when he looks at you. "You're not eating," he said, appearing next to me with a plate. He'd put together a burger with all the toppings, a scoop of that infamous potato salad, and a pickle spear on the side. "I noticed you've been nursing that same beer for 40 minutes. Maybe I'm pacing myself," I said. "Or maybe you're trying to figure out an exit strategy." He grinned. "I've been to enough of Lisa's parties to know the look." I laughed, really laughed. And that was it. We were inseparable within a month. He'd show up at my apartment with takeout and flowers. Not roses, but wildflowers from the farmer's market, because I'd mentioned once that roses felt generic. He remembered everything. My favourite movie, my coffee order, the name of my childhood dog. When my car broke down on I-85 at 11 at night, he drove 40 minutes to sit with me while we waited for the tow truck. And he brought me a blanket and a thermos of hot chocolate because he said, nobody should wait on the highway without hot chocolate. By month 3, I'd met his family. And that's where things get complicated. Karen Whitfield was a woman who smiled with her mouth but never with her eyes. She was the kind of mother-in-law you see in movies. Perfectly coiffed blonde hair, Lily Pulitzer dresses, monogrammed everything. She ran the Whitfield household like a CEO runs a Fortune 500 company, and everyone fell in line. Doug, Michael's father, was a quiet man who'd made good money in commercial real estate, and now spent his retirement playing golf and agreeing with whatever Karen said. The first time I had dinner at their house, Karen looked me up and down. I was wearing a sundress and sandals and said, "Oh, how casual. Michael didn't tell you this was a sit-down dinner." He had not in fact told me because it wasn't. It was a Tuesday night and they were having pot roast. "Mom, she looks great," Michael said, squeezing my hand under the table. "Of course she does, sweetheart. I just wouldn't want her to feel underdressed." Karen smiled that smile, the one I'd come to know very, very well. Jennifer, Michael's older sister, was Karen's carbon copy. Same hair, same smile, same ability to deliver an insult wrapped in a compliment. Her husband Todd was a corporate attorney who talked about his car a lot. Brandon, the younger brother, was the only one who seemed genuinely warm. He hugged me the first time we met and said, "Thank God, someone normal." I should have listened to Brandon more carefully. Michael proposed on a Saturday morning in our favourite park 9 months after that barbecue. He got down on one knee next to the fountain where we'd had our third date, and I said yes before he even finished the question. The ring was beautiful, a princess cut diamond just over 1 carat. I found out later that Karen had picked it out, but at the time I didn't care. We got married the following spring in a ceremony that Karen orchestrated down to the last detail. I wanted a small wedding, maybe 60 people outdoors. We had 220 guests at the Charlotte Country Club, and I knew maybe 40 of them. My parents, who'd driven up from Savannah, looked overwhelmed the entire time. My mom kept smoothing her dress like she was afraid she'd chosen wrong. "Your family is a lot," my best friend Dana whispered to me during the reception. "They're just traditional," I said. "They'll warm up." They did not warm up. After the wedding, Michael and I moved into a house in the suburbs, a 4-bedroom colonial in a neighborhood with an HOA that sent you letters if your grass was half an inch too tall. Karen found the house. Karen recommended the realtor. Karen came with us to the closing and sat next to the notary, pointing out things in the paperwork that she thought we should reconsider. The house was in both our names, but the down payment, $62,000, came from Michael's trust fund, which was technically Whitfield family money. Karen made sure I knew this. Not directly, of course. She'd say things like, "It's so nice that Michael could provide this for you both," or "This neighborhood is really a step up, isn't it, Ashley?" I let it go. I let everything go in those early months because I was happy. Michael was attentive, funny, loving. He'd cook dinner on Wednesdays, his specialty night, and we'd eat pasta on the back porch and talk about our days. He was working in sales for a medical device company, and he was good at it. Charming people was his superpower. For the first year, it was close to perfect, close enough that I ignored the cracks. The cracks were small at first. Karen calling every single day, sometimes twice. Michael taking the calls even during dinner, even during movies, even once during a moment of intimacy that I will never, ever discuss in detail. He'd mouth sorry at me and step out of the room, and I'd hear him saying, "Yes, Mum. Of course, Mum. I'll tell her." The tell her was always a suggestion. A suggestion about how I should arrange the living room. A suggestion about what dish to bring to Thanksgiving. A suggestion that maybe I should cut back my hours at work since Michael works enough for both of you. I didn't cut back my hours. I loved my job. I was good at it. I'd just been promoted to senior analyst, and my boss, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia, told me I was on track for a management position within 2 years. But the suggestions kept coming, and Michael kept relaying them. And slowly, so slowly I didn't notice it happening, the suggestions turned into expectations. By our second Thanksgiving as a married couple, I was cooking for Michael's entire family. Not because anyone asked me directly, it just happened. Karen mentioned that she was so tired this year, and wouldn't it be lovely to have Thanksgiving at our house? Michael said it would mean a lot to him. Jennifer said she'd bring a side dish. She brought store-bought rolls. And suddenly, I was brining a 22 lb turkey at 11 lunch at night while Michael watched football in the other room. I served 12 people that Thanksgiving. I cooked for 2 days straight. When it was over, Karen looked at the table and said, "The gravy is a little thin, but otherwise not bad for your first real hosting." I smiled. I said thank you. That night, after everyone left, I stood in the kitchen surrounded by dishes and cried for 10 minutes. Then I washed every single plate, dried them, put them away, and went to bed. Michael was already asleep. That was the pattern. That became our life. Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering, it happened at our house and I did all the work. Michael helped sometimes, but his help looked like carrying a chair from one room to another and then disappearing. Karen directed. Jennifer criticized. Doug ate silently. Brandon would try to help with dishes and Karen would shoo him away, saying, "Let Ashley handle it. That's her domain. Her domain," like I was the hired help. But here's what I need you to understand. I wasn't miserable every day. That's what makes stories like this so hard to tell. There were good days. Days when Michael would surprise me with concert tickets. Days when we drive to the mountains and hike for hours and laugh until our stomachs hurt. Days when he'd look at me across the room and I'd feel that same electricity from the barbecue. Those days kept me anchored. Those days made me think the bad parts were temporary, that Karen would eventually accept me, that Michael would eventually set boundaries, that our marriage was fundamentally solid, just going through growing pains. I was wrong about all of it. The first real sign came on a Wednesday night in October, about 2 years into our marriage. Michael's specialty night, except he wasn't home. He texted at 5 saying he had a client dinner. Fine, normal. He worked in sales. Client dis happened. But by 9 he hadn't texted again and he wasn't answering his phone. By 10 I'd called 3 times. By 11 I was sitting on the couch in the dark, my stomach in knots, telling myself I was overreacting. He came home at midnight, luffendad tie, flushed cheeks, that easy grin. Sorry, babe. Dinner ran long. You know how clients get. You didn't answer your phone, I said. It died, forgot my charger. He kissed my forehead. Don't wait up for me next time, okay? I hate thinking of you sitting here worrying. I nodded. I believed him. But when he went to shower, I saw his phone on the counter. It was at 63% battery. I stared at that number for a long time. 63%. Not dead, not even close to dead. I picked up the phone and for the first time in our entire relationship, I thought about looking through it. My thumb hovered over the screen. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then, I set it back down because I trusted him. Because good wives trust their husbands. Because I was Ashley Whitfield and I didn't snoop and I didn't cause drama, and I certainly didn't accuse my husband of lying over a battery percentage. I went to bed. Michael came out of the shower smelling like our soap, climbed in next to me and fell asleep in minutes. I lay there until 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe and feeling something I couldn't quite name settle into my chest like a stone. 63%. I know now that I should have looked at that phone. I should have trusted my gut instead of trusting him. Because what I would have found that night would have changed everything. And maybe, just maybe, I could have saved myself 2 more months of living in a lie. But I didn't look, and the lie kept growing. And the next family dinner was only 5 days away. That family dinner, 5 days after the phone incident, was at our house, naturally. It was always at our house. Karen had decided it was time for a casual Sunday supper, which in Karen speak meant a 3-course meal with cloth napkins and a centerpiece. I spent all day Saturday prepping. Marinated chicken, roasted vegetables, a homemade apple pie because Nana Ruth had mentioned once, that she liked apple pie and Karen had turned it into a commandment. Ashley, you know how much Nana loves your apple pie. You are making one, aren't you? Michael was supposed to help me clean the house Saturday afternoon. Instead, he got a call around noon and said he needed to run to the office for an hour. He came back 4 hours later with no explanation. And when I asked where he'd been, he said, "Babe, it's work stuff. You wouldn't understand the sales side." I had a degree in finance. I understood the sales side just fine, but I didn't push. I cleaned the house myself, set the table for 8, and went to bed with aching feet and a headache that no amount of Advil could touch. Sunday dinner started fine. Karen arrived first, of course, 20 minutes early, which she knew I hated because it meant she'd catch me still in the kitchen, still sweating, still imperfect. She walked in, wearing creme-coloured slacks and a silk blouse, surveyed the dining room, and moved 3 of my place settings to different spots. "I just think the flow works better this way," she said when I stared at the rearranged table. Jennifer and Todd arrived next with their 3 kids, who immediately started running through the house. Jennifer handed me a bottle of wine, a $7 Moscato from the gas station, and said, "I figured you could use this. You look exhausted." Brandon came alone that night. He found me in the kitchen while everyone else was in the living room. "Hey," he said, leaning against the counter. "How are you?" "Like, actually." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "Ashley," he lowered his voice, "I'm not Mom. You can be honest." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for a second, I almost said it. Almost said, "Your brother came home at midnight with a dead phone that wasn't dead, and something is wrong and I'm scared." But Karen's laugh rang out from the living room and the moment passed. "I'm just tired," I said. "Help me carry the chicken?" During dinner, Karen dominated the conversation as usual. She talked about the new landscaping at their house, the upcoming church fundraiser, Jennifer's kids' private school admissions. At one point, she turned to me and said, "Ashley, have you thought any more about what we discussed?" I blinked. "What we discussed, about stepping back from work. Michael mentioned you've been stressed." I looked at Michael. He was cutting his chicken, not meeting my eyes. "Michael said that?" I kept my voice steady. "Well, he worries about you, honey. And honestly, with how much you have on your plate at home, the house, the entertaining, Everything you do for this family, it just seems like a lot. Something has to give. The table was quiet. Everyone was watching. My job isn't the thing that needs to give, I said. Karen's smile didn't waver. Of course not. I'm just saying it might be nice to have some breathing room. Jennifer didn't go back to work after the twins, and she's never been happier. Jennifer nodded, sipping her gas station Moscato. It's true. Best decision I ever made. Jennifer's situation is different from mine, I said. Is it? Karen tilted her head. You're both Whitfield wives. Whitfield wives, like it was a job title. Like it came with a dress code and a non-compete clause. I felt Michael's hand on my knee under the table. A squeeze, not comforting. Warning, drop it. I dropped it. After dinner, while I was loading the dishwasher, alone as always, I heard Karen and Michael talking in the hallway. Their voices were low, but sound carried in that house. She's getting difficult, Karen said. She's not difficult, Mom. She's just independent. Independent. Karen said the word like it tasted sour. Michael, I've held my tongue for 2 years, but that woman is not integrating into this family. She won't leave her job. She won't join the women's group at church. She barely participates in the holiday. She does all the cooking, Mom. She hosts every single event. Hosting isn't just cooking, Michael. It's about being present, being warm. Your father's mother, God rest her, she understood what it meant to be part of something bigger than herself. I stood there with a dirty plate in my hand, water running, listening to my mother-in-law describe me as a woman who wasn't warm enough, wasn't present enough, and I waited. I waited for Michael to defend me, to say something sharp, something final, something that drew a line. I'll talk to her, he said. That was it. That was his defense of me. I'll talk to her. Like I was an employee underperforming on a quarterly review. He did talk to me, that night in bed, lights off. Babe, can you just try a little harder with my mom? Try harder how, Michael? I cook for her, I clean for her, I host her entire family every other week. I know, and she appreciates it. She just wants to feel closer to you. Maybe go to lunch with her sometime, or join that church group she mentioned. I don't want to join a church group, I work full-time. Okay, he sighed. Forget I said anything. But I couldn't forget. Because the message was clear. Karen's comfort mattered more than mine. Karen's vision of what life should be mattered more than who I actually was. 2 weeks later, the second crack appeared, and this one was a canyon. I came home from work early on a Thursday. Patricia had let us go at 3 because we'd just closed a massive quarterly audit. And Michael's car was in the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be home until 6+N. I felt a little flutter of excitement, thinking maybe we could actually spend an afternoon together for once. Watch a movie, order Thai food, be normal. I walked in through the garage door, dropped my bag on the kitchen counter, and heard his voice upstairs. He was on the phone, and he was laughing. That low, warm laugh he used to save for me. I know, he was saying. Thursday works. Yeah, she's got some work thing Friday night, so no, it's fine. She doesn't suspect anything. My blood turned to ice. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, one hand on the railing, and listened. My heartbeat was so loud I was sure he could hear it. You worry too much, Michael continued. Trust me. Ashley has no idea. She's too busy trying to impress my mother to notice anything. Then he laughed again. And I heard a voice on the other end, tinny through the speaker, but unmistakably female, soft, flirtatious. I don't know how long I stood there. 30 seconds? A minute? Time does strange things when your world is collapsing. I remember noticing a cobweb in the corner of the ceiling and thinking, I need to clean that. My brain was protecting me from the enormity of what I'd just heard by focusing on a cobweb. Then Michael said, okay, got to go, miss you. And I heard the beep of the call ending. I moved fast. By the time he came downstairs, I was standing in the kitchen unpacking groceries I hadn't bought, pretending I'd just walked in. Hey, he looked startled. You're home early. Patricia let us out. Quarterly audit wrapped up. My voice sounded normal, eerily normal. Who were you talking to? Work call, client in rally. He opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, casual as anything. Want to order food tonight? Sure, I said. Thai? Perfect. He kissed my cheek and walked into the living room. I stood in the kitchen and gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. He'd said miss you to a client in Raleigh. He'd said she doesn't suspect anything. He'd laughed about me, about my efforts to be a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, like it was a joke. Like I was a joke. That night, after Michael fell asleep, I did what I should have done 2 weeks earlier. I picked up his phone. The passcode was the same one he'd always used, his birthday, 0917. He'd never bothered to change it because he never thought I'd look. The messages were right there, in a thread with a contact saved as Dave, Raleigh office. But Dave didn't text like a coworker. Dave sent heart emojis and selfies in bathroom mirrors, and messages like, last night was incredible, and when are you leaving her? When are you leaving her? I scrolled back. The thread went back 3 months. 3 months of dinners that ran long. That's months of dead phones that weren't dead. 3 months of lies stacked so neatly they looked like truth. Her real name was Megan. I found it in a message where she'd signed off with her full name, Megan Ashford, along with a link to her Instagram. I didn't click it, not yet. My hands were shaking too badly. I put the phone back exactly where it was. I went to the bathroom, closed the door, sat on the cold tile floor and pressed my fist against my mouth so hard I tasted blood. I didn't cry. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But something inside me had shifted. Some wall had gone up, some survival mechanism I didn't know I had. Instead of grief, I felt a cold crystalline clarity. He was cheating. He'd been cheating. And his family, Karen with her suggestions, Jennifer with her criticisms, all of them pushing me to be smaller, quieter, more compliant. They'd been keeping me so busy, so exhausted, so focused on being the perfect Whitfield wife that I hadn't even noticed my husband was already halfway out the door. I sat on that bathroom floor for an hour. And in that hour, something happened that I can only describe as a shift. Like tectonic plates moving deep underground, silent, invisible, but absolutely irreversible. The Ashley who walked into that bathroom was a woman trying to save her marriage. The Ashley who walked out was a woman trying to save herself. But I didn't leave, not yet, because I needed to know how deep this went. I needed to know if it was just Michael, or if the whole family had been watching me play house while my husband played around. And the answer to that question came 4 days later, at the worst possible moment. Karen's 63rd birthday party, held at our house, catered by me, attended by everyone who'd ever made me feel like I wasn't good enough. I was carrying a 3-tier cake to the dining room table when Jennifer cornered me in the hallway. "Cute dress," she said, blocking my path. Then she leaned in close, and what she was next made me nearly drop that cake on the hardwood floor. I know about Megan, and honestly, Ashley, I don't blame him. I didn't drop the cake. I want you to know that. Despite every nerve in my body firing at once, despite the floor tilting under my feet and Jennifer's smug face swimming in my vision, I carried that 3-tier lemon cake with buttercream frosting, Karen's favourite, which I'd spent 4 hours making, to the dining room table and set it down gently, perfectly centered, not a single smudge on the frosting. Then I turned around, walked back to the hallway, and looked Jennifer dead in the eye. "What did you just say to me?" Jennifer crossed her arms. She was wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my car payment, and her expression was the same one Karen made when she rearranged my place settings. Patient, superior, like she was explaining something to a child. "I said I know about Megan, and I don't blame him," she shrugged. "Look, Ashley, I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to be honest. You've been so focused on your little career and your independence that you forgot to actually be a wife. Michael has needs." "Michael has needs," I repeated, my voice flat. "Emotional needs, physical needs. A man like Michael, he needs someone who's present, someone who makes him feel like he's the priority, not someone who comes home at 6:30 complaining about spreadsheets." I could hear Karen in the dining room laughing at something Doug said. The kids were shrieking in the backyard. The house was full of people, and I had never felt more alone in my life. "How long have you known?" I asked. Jennifer examined her nails. "A few months." Michael told Mom first, obviously. Then Mom told, "We've been managing the situation." Managing the situation? Trying to figure out the best path forward for everyone. She looked at me with something that might have been pity if it had come from anyone else. "Ashley, you're a nice girl, you really are, but you were never quite right for this family. I think deep down you know that." I felt the words land like physical blows. Each one precise, each one calibrated. This wasn't spontaneous cruelty. This was a message that had been drafted, reviewed, and approved by the Whitfield family board of directors. "Karen knows," I said, not a question. "Karen's known since September." September. That was 3 months. 3 months of Karen sitting at my dinner table, eating food I cooked, sleeping in bed, I say, smiling that tight smile, all while knowing her son was sleeping with another woman. 3 months of try harder, Ashley, and be warmer, Ashley, and join the church group, Ashley, all while they were already planning my replacement. I walked past Jennifer without another word. I went upstairs to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub. My hands were just shaking so violently I couldn't hold my phone. I tried to call Dana 3 times before my fingers cooperated enough to hit the right contact. She didn't answer. It went to voicemail. I tried my mom. Voicemail. I tried my dad. Voicemail. It was a Sunday evening. Everyone was living their lives, eating their dinners, watching their shows, and I was sitting in a bathroom in a house full of people who had collectively decided I was disposable, and I couldn't reach a single person who actually loved me. I splashed water on my face, went back downstairs, and served Karen's birthday cake. I sang happy birthday with the rest of them. I smiled. I cleared the plates. I loaded the dishwasher. I hugged Karen goodbye and said, "Happy birthday, Karen," and she held my face in her hands and said, "Thank you, sweetheart, you outdid yourself." She knew. She knew and she touched my face and she called me sweetheart. I think that was the moment something broke inside me that has never fully healed. After everyone left, Michael loosened his tie and dropped onto the couch. "Good night," he said. "Mom loved the cake. I'm glad. You okay? You seem quiet, just tired. Come sit with me." He patted the cushion next to him. We haven't had a night to ourselves in weeks. I sat next to my husband, the man who was cheating on me, whose family knew and approved, who was right now texting someone saved as Dave. Raleigh office, under the blanket he was sharing with me, and I watched 40 minutes of a show I can't remember the name of. Then I went to bed. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. I kept going to work, kept cooking, kept cleaning, kept smiling, but inside I was hollowing out. I'd lost 7 pounds in 2 weeks because I could barely eat. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, drenched in sweat, heart racing, and lie there counting the minutes until it was acceptable to get up and start pretending again. The worst part, the absolute worst part, was that I couldn't tell anyone. Dana was on a work trip in London. My parents were dealing with my dad's knee surgery. And every time I thought about saying the words out loud, "My husband is cheating on me and his whole family knows," my throat would close up like my body was physically refusing to release the shame. Because that's what it was. Shame. Not anger, not sadness, shame. Like I had failed at the one thing I was supposed to be good at. Like if I'd been prettier, softer, less focused on my career, more like a Whitfield wife, none of this would have happened. Karen's voice lived in my head rent-free, whispering that I wasn't warm enough, wasn't present enough, wasn't enough. I started eating lunch alone in my car at work. Patricia noticed. She called me into her office on a Tuesday afternoon, closed the door and said, "Ashley, what's going on? And don't tell me nothing, because I've watched you stare at the same spreadsheet for 3 hours." I opened my mouth to say, "I'm fine." The words that came out instead were, "My husband is having an affair and his mother has known for 3 months. Then I cried. Really cried. For the first time since this all started, I sat in Patricia's office with the blinds closed and sobbed until my ribs ached. She handed me tissues, one after another, and didn't say a word until I was done. "Okay," Patricia said, leaning forward with her elbows on her desk. "Here's what we're going to do. First, you're taking the rest of the day off. Second, you're calling a lawyer. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. I can't afford a lawyer. You're a financial analyst making $78,000 a year. You can afford a consultation." And Ashley, she waited until I looked at her. "You need to protect yourself, financially, legally, everything. Do you have a separate bank account?" I didn't. Everything was joint. Michael's direct deposit, my direct deposit, all flowing into the same Wells Fargo checking account that Karen had helped us set up when we got married. "Open one today," Patricia said. "Move enough to cover first and last month's rent somewhere. Don't touch anything else yet. You don't want it to look like you're hiding assets, but you need a safety net." "How do you know all this?" I asked, wiping my eyes. Patricia leaned back. "Because 12 years ago, I was you. Different husband, same story, and the woman who told me to open a separate bank account saved my life." She paused. "Now I'm telling you." I drove home that afternoon in a daze, but for the first time in weeks, something besides shame was burning in my chest. It was small, barely a flicker, but it was there. Purpose, direction, a plan taking shape in the dark. I pulled into a Wells Fargo branch 3 miles from our house, not our usual branch, and opened a checking account in my name only. I transferred $4,200, which was roughly 2 months of expenses if I lived lean. I memorized the account number and deleted the confirmation email. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop while Michael was in the shower and searched divorce attorney Charlotte NC. I found a woman named Rachel Torres with a 4.9-star rating and reviews that said things like "she fights like hell" and "saved me from a narcissist." I booked a consultation for the following Monday. Then I did something I'd been avoiding for weeks. I opened Instagram and searched for Megan Ashford. She was 23, blonde, a dental hygienist at a practice in Raleigh. Her feed was full of brunch photos, gym selfies, and inspirational quotes about living your truth. In one photo from 6 weeks ago, she was wearing a necklace I recognized, a thin gold chain with a small pendant. Michael had told me he'd lost that necklace, a gift from Nana Ruth at the gym. He'd given his grandmother's necklace to his mistress. I closed the app, closed the laptop, and sat in the dark kitchen listening to Michael sing in the shower upstairs. The same shower where he washed off the scent of another woman before climbing into bed with me. The same house where his mother rearranged my place settings and his sister told me I deserved to be cheated on. The flicker inside me grew. Not into a flame, not yet, but into something steady. Something cold and clear, like the beam of a flashlight cutting through pitch black. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to shrink. I wasn't going to be the quiet, grateful, invisible Ashley that this family had tried to mold me into. Monday morning, I sat in Rachel Torres's office, a sharp modern space on the 6th floor of a building downtown, and laid out everything. The affair, the family's knowledge, the house with the trust fund down payment, the joint accounts. Rachel listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked up and said, "North Carolina is an equitable distribution state. That means the court divides assets fairly, not necessarily 50-50. But here's the important part. North Carolina also recognizes alienation of affection as a cause of action." What does that mean? It means you can sue the person who interfered with your marriage, Megan Ashford. Separately from the divorce, I stared at her. I can sue her. You can sue her. And depending on the evidence, which sounds substantial, you could be looking at a significant judgment. I've seen cases settle for 6 figures. Rachel clicked her pen. But more importantly, the affair gives you leverage in the divorce itself. His family's involvement, the emotional manipulation, the fact that they knew and actively concealed it. All of this paints a picture that any judge in Mecklenburg County would find very compelling. I left Rachel's office with a retainer agreement, a checklist of documents I needed to gather, and a feeling I hadn't experienced in months. Power, quiet, deliberate, dangerous power. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost in my own house, smiling, cooking, doing everything exactly the same, while secretly building a case file that would bring the Whitfield family to its knees. I photographed Michael's phone screen when he left it unlocked. I saved screenshots to a secure cloud folder. I documented every dollar, every account, every asset. I pulled records from our mortgage company. I printed statements showing that my salary had paid for 60% of the household expenses, despite Karen's narrative that Michael provided everything. And I waited, because Rachel had told me something that stuck. Don't leave until you're ready. And when you leave, leave so completely that they never see you coming. That's why when Karen announced that the whole family would be coming to stay at our house for the long weekend, all 12 of them, 3 days before Michael came home at 4 in the morning, I said yes. I smiled, I bought fresh sheets, I planned a menu, and I set my alarm for 3:30 a.m. because I knew that weekend would be the last time I'd ever cook for the Whitfield family. I just didn't know yet that Michael would walk through that door, smelling like whiskey and Megan's perfume, and hand me the one thing I'd been waiting for. The word divorce from his mouth, not mine, which meant he'd fired first. And in North Carolina family court, that distinction was about to matter more than he could possibly imagine. My suitcase was already packed. It had been packed for 6 days, hidden in the trunk of my car. The performance of packing it in minutes while Michael watched, that was for him. That was theatre. The real preparation had been happening for weeks in spreadsheets and legal documents and a bank account he didn't know existed. Orchestrated by a woman he'd underestimated every single day of their marriage. I drove away from that house at 4:16 a.m. with the windows down and the November air biting my cheeks. I didn't turn on the radio, I didn't cry. I drove exactly 11 miles to a Holiday Inn where I'd reserved a room 3 days earlier, and I sat on the edge of a stiff mattress and called Rachel Torres. He said divorce, I told her unprompted, at 4 in the morning in front of a house full of his family. Rachel was quiet for a moment, then she said, "Good. Now we move." And that's exactly what we did. Monday morning at 8:01 a.m., Rachel Torres filed the divorce petition in Mecklenburg County Family Court. By 8:47, she'd also filed the alienation of affection claim against Megan Ashford. By noon, Michael Whitfield had been officially served at his office in front of his co-workers by a process server named Gerald, who later told Rachel that Michael's face went the color of old milk. I know this because Rachel called me at the Holiday Inn with updates every 2 hours, like a general reporting from the front lines. "He's called my office 3 times, she said at 2:00. His mother called once. I let it all go to voicemail. "What did Karen say?" she said, and I'm quoting, "This is a family matter and attorneys have no place in it." I almost admired the audacity. By that evening, my phone had 47 missed calls, 21 from Michael, 14 from Karen, 6 from Doug, which surprised me. I wasn't sure Doug knew how to use a phone for anything other than checking golf scores. I answered none of them. Instead, I sat cross-legged on that Holiday Inn bed with my laptop open and organized every piece of evidence into the folder Rachel had requested. Screenshots of the Dave Raleigh office messages. Photos of Michael's phone showing Megan's texts, including the one that read, "When are you leaving her?" Timestamps, dates, locations. Bank statements showing my salary covering 60% of our household expenses. A spreadsheet because I'm a financial analyst. And spreadsheets are how I process reality. Documenting every family event I'd hosted, every meal I'd cooked, every dollar I'd spent on the Whitfield family in 3 years of marriage. The spreadsheet alone was devastating. I'd spent over $14,000 on groceries, decorations, and supplies for Whitfield family events. $14,000 feeding people who were rooting for my marriage to fail. Rachel reviewed everything Tuesday morning and called me with a voice I hadn't heard from her before, almost giddy. Ashley, this is one of the most well-documented cases I've ever seen. The alienation of affection claim alone with the family's knowledge and active concealment. This is textbook. Megan Ashford's attorney is going to take one look at this and beg to settle. And the divorce? He asked for it verbally in a house full of witnesses at 4 a.m, after coming home smelling like another woman's perfume. His family was there. They heard it. That's 12 potential witnesses to his conduct. She paused. Ashley, he didn't just hand you a divorce, he handed you leverage. Wednesday, Michael finally got through, not by calling, by showing up. He found me in the parking lot of my office building at 5:30, leaning against his car with his arms crossed, wearing the blue button-down I'd ironed for him 100 times. Ashley, we need to talk. You can contact my attorney. I kept walking toward my car. Your attorney? Are you serious right now? He jogged to catch up. Ash, I said that word because I was drunk. I didn't mean it. I came home. I was exhausted. I'd had too much to drink. You'd had too much of Megan Ashford. He stopped. Dead stopped. The colour drained from his face exactly the way I'd imagined it would. How do I know? I turned around slowly. Michael, I've known for weeks. I know her name. I know she's 23. I know she's a dental hygienist. I know you gave her Nana Ruth's necklace. I watched each fact hit him like a slap. And I know your mother has known since September. And Jennifer told me at Karen's birthday party that she doesn't blame you. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. He looked like a fish pulled out of water, gasping for something that wasn't there anymore. Ash, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You asked for a divorce and you're getting one. The papers have been filed. You've been served. And Megan Ashford has been served too. Served for what? Alienation of affection. It's a real law in North Carolina. Look it up. I got in my car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, Michael was still standing in the parking lot, both hands on top of his head, staring at nothing. The next 3 weeks were chaos for the Whitfield family and precision for me. Karen hired a lawyer, a friend from the country club named Gerald Pratt, who played golf with Doug and thought he could handle a family court case because he'd done corporate mergers for 30 years. Rachel Torres ate him alive. In their first meeting, Gerald tried to argue that the down payment of $62,000 from Michael's trust fund entitled him to a disproportionate share of the home equity. Rachel countered with documentation showing my income had paid the majority of the mortgage payments, property taxes, and every single home improvement over 3 years. The equity in that house was $41,000 above the original purchase price, and my financial contributions exceeded Michael's by over $23,000. Gerald Pratt withdrew from the case 2 weeks later. Karen was furious. But the real earthquake was the alienation of affection suit against Megan. Her attorney, a young guy from Raleigh who looked terrified in the deposition, tried to argue that Megan didn't know Michael was married. Rachel pulled up Megan's own text messages. I know you're still with her, but not for long, right? And does your wife know you're here? And the most damning one of all, sent at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October. Tell Ashley you're working late. I made reservations. Megan's attorney recommended she settle. The amount? $87,000. Her insurance didn't cover it. Her parents co-signed. I donated $10,000 of it to a women's shelter in Charlotte. The rest went into my new bank account, the one Karen didn't know existed. The one Patricia had told me to open on that Tuesday afternoon that saved my life. The divorce was finalized 4 months after that November morning. I got half the home equity, my full 401k, which Michael's attorney had tried to claim a portion of, and every piece of furniture I'd bought with my own money, which was most of it. Michael kept the house. He could have it. The ghost of me was in every room. In the kitchen where I'd cooked 1,000 meals nobody thanked me for. In the dining room where Karen rearranged my place settings. In the bathroom where I'd sat on cold tile and pressed my fist against my mouth. Let him live with those ghosts. I was done haunting that house. The day the divorce was final, I drove to my parents' house in Savannah. My mom met me at the door and I collapsed into her arms like I was 6 years old again. My dad, still recovering from his knee surgery, walking with a cane, put his hand on my head and said, "You're the toughest person I know, Ash." And I worked construction for 40 years. Dana flew back from London the following week. She showed up at my new apartment, a 1-bedroom in a quiet complex in South Charlotte. Nothing fancy but mine, with 2 bottles of wine and a cheese board. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," she said, tears in her eyes. "You're here now," I said, and that was enough. Brandon called me a month after the divorce. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "I just want you to know," he said, "that I told Michael he was an idiot the night you left, and I told my mother she should be ashamed of herself. She hasn't spoken to me since, and honestly, Ashley, that might be the best thing that's come out of this whole mess." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. "Brandon, You were the only good one. Low bar, he said, but I'll take it. 6 months after I walked out of that house with my Cancun suitcases, I got the promotion Patricia had been grooming me for. Senior Management Financial Analysis Division. Corner office with a window. Salary $96,000 plus bonus structure. I sat in my new chair on the first day, looked out at the Charlotte skyline, and thought about that woman standing in her kitchen at 3:47 in the morning, arranging fruit for people who hated her. She felt like a stranger, a ghost of someone I used to be. I heard through Brandon that Michael and Megan broke up 2 months after the divorce. Apparently, the $87,000 settlement put some strain on the romance. He moved back in with Karen and Doug. He was 31 years old, living in his childhood bedroom, while his mother rearranged his life the way she'd once rearranged my place settings. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a flicker of satisfaction. But here's the truth, and this is the part that matters more than the money, more than the legal victories, more than watching the Whitfield empire crack. The most important thing that happened wasn't the divorce, it wasn't the lawsuit, it wasn't the promotion or the new apartment or the bank account with my name on it. The most important thing was the moment I set down that whisk on the granite counter at 4 a.m. and chose myself. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. The way a bone resets after a break. The way a door closes and the lock clicks and you realize you're not trapped inside anymore. You're free on the other side. I used to think being a good wife meant being invisible, cooking without being asked, smiling without being happy, shrinking so someone else could take up more space. Now I know that the most dangerous thing a woman can do is stop being invisible. Because once they see you, really see you, they realize you were the foundation all along. And foundations don't beg to be noticed. They just stop holding up the house. The cinnamon rolls burned that morning, by the way. Karen had to throw them out. Nobody remembered to check the timer. Good.